All right, so now I've got a decision to make because I think there's one team that's pretty obvious here, and there's one team that I don't really have a strong feel on, but I think I kind of have to do it to play for a potential block here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Florida Gators with my number 8 pick. They return a whole lot. I looked at them for my SEC one prediction per team piece, and I really think their run game will be much improved this year. That was an issue last year. If you looked at Florida's yards per carry, it was fine, right? But if you looked at their success rate, shout out Bill Connolly for some of those advanced metrics, it was really poor. Florida had several runs of 60, 70, 80 yards that sort of inflated their yards per carry total, but they were not very good gaining yards when they needed to and staying on schedule. This year, I think that offensive line grows up a little bit better. It's pretty rare for a Dan Mullen football team to not be able to run the football, and I think that they'll be able to do much better with that this year. And Kyle Trask returns with an offseason. I mean, not much of one, but returns as the returning starter this year. And in my opinion, this basically locks up one team in the SEC title game for me, right? With having Georgia and having Florida. In fact, if one of those two teams gets to Atlanta undefeated, they actually could, in theory, lose that title game and still go, depending on what happens in the other conferences. And I guess I'm just going to be an SEC homer here, and I'm going to follow up with LSU. I'm not super high on LSU, but I do think Ed Orgeron has something special going there. I don't think they were just a flash in the pan one-year wonder. I actually think they're going to be one of the top national title favorites in 2021. But in case I'm wrong, in case that they arrive, or not arrive, but in case they just stay around a little bit more than I think they will, to me, I feel pretty good sitting here with Clemson and then teams 2, 3, 4 in the SEC with you having Alabama.
No, I definitely like the pairing of Florida and Georgia. East is going to get into the playoffs eventually, and you've got a pretty good shot there. And like you said, they could get in without even winning the conference. LSU's an interesting one. Honestly, I had LSU lower on the board for me. There seems to be some Miles Brennan confidence. I have no doubts that the talent around him is good enough to run it back. I mean, Jamar Chase returns. Trey Palmer was like a 10, 400-meter guy that just got his feet wet last year. Terrace Marshall comes back at receiver. Those young running backs now sort of step into their role as the feature backs. Like, there's a lot of reasons why LSU could just keep this thing chugging. I couldn't get there, particularly when you look at just sort of the rest of the conference. The amount that they have to replace is up on defense. It was nice they got the North Dakota State transfer here recently at linebacker. That helps, but right or wrong, I would have been a little bit lower on LSU. I think Florida's fascinating because I have as much confidence in Dan Mullen as a coach on game day as anyone in the country. And by game day, I don't even necessarily mean like play calling. I just think general structure, general game plan, being able to exploit another team's weaknesses, being able to minimize your own. And then I think he did a really good job of that last year with Kyle Trask. I mean, it was all this short pass game stuff. It was utilizing a pretty deep receiving core. But a lot of those guys are gone this year. Everyone's sort of got the blueprint on Kyle Trask's strengths and weaknesses. I'm really interested in seeing what Florida looks like. And like you said, maybe the answer there is the run game becomes a much more central part of the equation. Because it flashed last year too, but I would have been very tempted to roll with Florida in this next set of picks for me as well. So
let me ask you this: if I had not taken LSU, and you now have picks 10 to 11, was LSU going to be there for me at 12?
Yeah, I think they would have.
Damn. All right. Okay. That's kind of the game theory of this. You had to think: is Bud going to push up Texas or Okie State? I had to think, all right, is Barton going to take LSU? And I'm not going to lie, like 9 felt high for LSU, but 10 and 11, especially that 11 spot, I'm like, I don't know. Is there an obvious team? Like, is there an obvious two? Is Barton going to snake LSU for me there? I don't know. That's kind of what makes this fun. Hopefully,
Yeah.
fun for the listener as well.
Okay. So I've got about circling them right now. There's like 4 teams right now that I think you want, that I feel confident you want, I should say.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm going to, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick the Pac-12. I'm going to pick Oregon, and I'm going to pick USC. Yeah. And the USC pick, to me, is really interesting. So let me go. We'll call it for the official ledger. We'll go Oregon at 10, USC at 11. So, Oregon, what? Like, sort of self-explanatory, that they were the best team of the Pac-12 last year. They return a loaded defense, really. I mean, the potential hit they could have taken from the NFL draft was absorbed when a lot of those guys decided to come back. Kayvon Thibodeau's in year 2. Obviously, they need a quarterback, but I feel good about the ability to go out and get a transfer in Anthony Brown from Boston College. Not even necessarily because he's going to be the answer, but because now if Tyler Shuck is the quarterback, he beat out Anthony Brown instead of beating out some guys that have never played before. And so whoever the quarterback is, it's someone that we can have confidence in. I think the receiving group's going to be improved. Running backs are the running backs back, and offensive line, Mario Cristobal is going to take care of that. So I think this Oregon is probably the safest Pac-12 champion pick. USC, I was looking at USC here recently. I think it might have been for the Cover 3 podcast. We were talking Pac-12 South. And just looking at the USC roster, like maybe I am compromised in the way I look at USC because of my recruiting background, because we've ranked their classes high. The names all resonate to me. But that is a talented roster, man. Like, Keaton Slovis is a quarterback who we all think is very good. He's going to be in year 2 with Graham Harrell. But how many times now have we seen a college football playoff participant trotting out a backup quarterback because of injury, because any number of different factors? Well, JT Daniels is their backup. So if they get banged up, JT Daniels can just pick up the baton. You've got a receiving group that is one of the best in the country with Tyler Vaughns and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Drake Metcalf and whatever. This is a group that is it Drake Metcalf? Is that their other receiver's name? Drake Davis? Not Drake Davis. This is a loaded group of receivers. The running back room is deep. Vi Malapai, Stephen Carr, the kid from Indiana who was a freshman last year, who I'm always Marquise Stepp.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of different types of backs they can utilize, and then defensively, again, you got guys like Jay Tufele and Marlon Tuipulotu, and these guys that were like borderline 5-star prospects. And yes, I am disappointed in the way USC has developed some of their elite players, especially in the defensive trenches. But a fresh voice on the defensive side of the ball coming in, a defensive coordinator, a really salty group of linebackers, former studs at defensive back that, if they're all healthy, is a pretty good room. I just think there's a lot to like from a talent perspective of USC. And then when we talk about the schedule, I actually kind of like that they're playing Alabama up front. I think Alabama wins that game, but if USC comes out there and is somehow just competitive, if that's a 1 or 2 score game, like a 10-point game, and somehow that they can have a really use that as a springboard for the rest of the season, yeah, they probably have to kind of run the table the rest of the way. But I think that with that roster, it's not inconceivable that USC could put together that kind of a bounce back year where Clay Helton's sitting there on the hot seat.
So we think a lot alike. Because I had these guys, both of them, literally right there. I'm a little surprised they lasted this long. I did choose the SEC over them last time. And when you told me you weren't going to take LSU at 10 or 11, I was like, all right, well, pretty sure I know where he's going here. And I think the logic is this: like, they can afford a loss to Ohio State or to Bama, but it can't be like a blowout loss to where the rest of the country thinks they don't belong on the national stage. They're just out west. Let's just forget about them. But I think if they're good enough to avoid that blowout loss to an Ohio State team or to this Bama team, then the logic follows that they're probably good enough to run the table in the Pac-12 and be a 12-1 champion. So I like that. I will never forget Slovis. I went pretty heavy in the live wagering on Utah when they knocked what's his name out when they knocked Slovis out of the game, and then who was the third stringer for USC who just
he was just throwing up bombs.
It's like 500,
dude.
Yeah.
And Michael Pittman, and like so that was a layup that USC wasn't going to be great the next game, because if you actually watched the way Fink was playing in that game, you knew that this was not going to work 2 games in a row. And so I can't even remember what USC did the following week, but I remember
the roadie at BYU.
Yes, I think that's right. And I was on BYU that week because, hey, week 1 backup guy throwing bombs, that might work, but not week 2.
Yeah. So I like these picks. I've seen a lot of Anthony Brown, and I was like, well, Oregon's a team I kind of feel runs the ball too much. And Boston College is a team that probably ran it a little bit too much. Like they had A.J. Dillon, who was awesome, but everybody knew they were going to run the ball all the time. He's very experienced throwing off play action. He actually can throw the deep ball pretty well. I think that could work there. I'm maybe not quite as high on Anthony Brown as you are, but again, I can't hate these because these were probably going to be my 2 picks here at 12 and at 13. So